My name is Madison Carrington. And no, I'm not taking his name out of pride. I keep it out of spite. Let it sting every time he hears it on the wind. 5 months after marrying Daniel, he became someone I didn't recognize. A wide receiver with ambition stitched into his DNA, he used to trace plays on my skin with his fingers like it was foreplay. He said I was his calm, his balance, that I grounded him. Turns out I was just the warm-up act. We lived in Charleston, South Carolina, in a historic colonial home passed down through my side of the family. 2 stories, brick red with black shutters, a wraparound porch that creaked with every memory. I painted the walls myself, soft ivory pine green, a shade of blue I imagined in European paintings. I thought I was building something real. But ambition eats through paint and promises like acid. The evening he told me about the contract with Black Ridge FC, a newly minted football club in London, I had just finished setting the table. Roast lamb, rosemary potatoes, a bottle of Californian Red. I'd been saving since our honeymoon in Napa. He didn't look me in the eye when he said it. $12.5 million, Mads, he said. We did it. That word hung heavy. I looked at him across the table, smiling like a man who'd just won a war but forgotten the soldiers he left behind. Then she spoke, his mother, Janice. Janice Carrington had moved in temporarily to help manage Daniel's career. What she really did was measure my worth with each breath. When I said I wanted to go with Daniel to London, she scoffed, sipping her wine with the smugness of someone who never earned her throne. Your divorce is final now, she said, her voice sharp and sweet like poison in a parfait. Daniel didn't even flinch, just laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck like he didn't know how to stand up for his own wife. I didn't answer her. My eyes dropped to the steak knife beside my plate. I didn't pick it up, didn't say a word. But something inside me shifted, like steel sliding into its holster. That night, I lay awake in the bed we once made love in, listening to Daniel pack in the next room. No conversation. No discussion. Just the sound of zippers and folded fabric. I had become a ghost in my own home. The next morning, he left for a 3-day camp in New York. Alone. No kiss goodbye. Just a text an hour later. This is what's best for both of us. And just like that, I knew. They thought they'd won. That I'd roll over quietly, divorce him, and let them sail off into their legacy. But I wasn't built for surrender. I was raised by women who survived droughts, hurricanes, and cheating fathers. My grandmother once shot a man who tried to steal her land, and then served lemonade to the sheriff who came to arrest him. I am not the background to anyone's empire. I walked through the house like a woman measuring the battlefield. Every wall, every photo, every memory was now a weapon or a liability. I took the wedding album and tossed it in the fireplace. Watched the pages curl and turn to ash. It felt good, like scratching an itch buried in bone. The next few weeks, Janice pretended to act civil. Probably under Daniel's direction. But I saw the way she looked at my jewelry, my clothes, the house. Like she was already making mental notes of what would stay and what would go. She even brought over a realtor brochure one afternoon and accidentally left it on the kitchen counter. I circled it in red and mailed it back to her. Aggression is best served with a smile. When the divorce papers arrived, unsigned, of course, I called my lawyer, Georgia Weller. She used to be a DA in Atlanta. Now she specialized in reputational damage and asset protection for high-net-worth women. The moment I told her what was happening, she smiled through the phone. We'll burn them quietly, she said. And when they're ash, we'll walk over the ruins in heels. It wasn't just about money. Though yes, I'd be taking half of every deal, endorsement, and residual check Daniel had coming, both in dollars and pounds. But this was personal. They didn't just try to discard me, they tried to erase me. Rewrite the story like I had never existed, so I dug in. I called every contact, every friend, every ex-colleague from my days at the design firm. I leveraged my name, my experience, and yes, the scandal. Because in America, if you play the victim long enough, they forget you started the fire. I got a gig redesigning a boutique hotel in Savannah. Quietly, I sold some antiques from the house and reinvested the cash into stocks Daniel's agent had once mocked. Apple, Tesla, and an upstart firm developing AI for medical diagnostics. Within 2 months, I had more liquidity than he probably thought I could spell. Janice left a voicemail one night. "You'll regret this. Women like you always do." I didn't reply. Instead, I ordered a case of vintage Bordeaux and drank one by the fire as I watched her son's social media implode. The tabloids had caught wind of a rumor. Daniel had been seen with the same publicist who once denied they were dating. Public sympathy shifted fast. And I hadn't even started yet. I was Madison Carrington, once his balance, now his storm. They thought I was the quiet girl in the background. They were about to learn, I don't whisper when I burn. I didn't cry when Daniel left for Europe. I didn't scream, beg, or send one of those desperate texts people write in the dark and regret in daylight. No. I packed my silence like a knife, tucked it in my chest, and smiled at the emptiness he left behind.
He said I should stay behind and find myself.
His agent, a weasel named Troy Beckett, advised him to appear single. It made him marketable. The brand of a bachelor athlete was apparently worth more than a wedding band. I wasn't even invited to the send-off party at Troy's brownstone in Brooklyn. Instead, Daniel wired me $20,000 with a single line in the memo, "No hard feelings." He thought money would numb the betrayal. I didn't touch a dollar of it. Instead, I opened my jewelry box and stared at the only thing I swore I'd never sell, my grandmother's wedding ring. Rose-cut diamond framed in tiny pearls passed down 3 generations. She once told me, "This ring survived war, infidelity, and fire. Keep it until someone tries to take your worth." I sold it that afternoon. It bought me a one-way, first-class ticket to London. No luggage, no itinerary. Just one burning need: get close enough to ruin him without even whispering my name. Daniel thought he could bury me. What he didn't realize was that I had learned to bloom in graveyards. London in November was cold and unapologetic. The sky stayed gray like it mourned something it wouldn't speak of. I rented a flat in Camden, the kind of place you don't ask too many questions about. It had iron bars on the windows and a bathtub older than the Queen, but it was mine. I took a new name, Madison Blake. It tasted sharper than Carrington, like a name with claws. I dyed my hair a deep auburn and traded my southern charm for a hard English edge. I learned to dress like the women here, sleek, minimal, brutal. Black wool coats, Chelsea boots, a smear of red lipstick that said "Don't touch me unless you want to bleed." Getting work wasn't hard. London thrives on appearances, and I knew how to manipulate them. I used an old connection from my interior design days and landed a job at a boutique PR firm in Kensington. We curated luxury events for athletes, influencers, and tech billionaires pretending to care about sustainability. It didn't take long before I was managing guest lists for the exact circles Daniel moved in. I didn't reach out to him. I let him come to me, indirectly, through parties and press rooms and pre-season banquets. The first time I saw him again, it was from behind the curtain at a charity gala in Mayfair. He stood under a chandelier, surrounded by men with expensive smiles and women in dresses they couldn't afford without plastic surgery, and on his arm? Amelia Devonshire. A tall, sun-drenched socialite with honey blonde hair, a trust fund from Brighton, and a last name with more power than Parliament. The kind of woman you don't date, you inherit. They looked like a magazine cover, and for a second, I almost admired her. Until I saw the way Daniel looked at her, like he was polishing her, not loving, just shaping her. I watched them for weeks. I learned their patterns, their social calendar, their secrets. Amelia had a tell. She drank one too many glasses of white wine at every event and overcompensated with small talk. She hated her father's empire but didn't know how to live without it. She thought Daniel was her rebellion. I almost felt sorry for her, almost, because she stood where I stood. And she smiled the way I once did, before I realized it was all a lie. The revenge didn't come like thunder. It came like a fog, creeping into every corner of his life until he couldn't tell what was real and what was manipulation. First, I made sure Amelia and I became acquainted, casually, of course. I bumped into her at a luxury skincare launch, pretending not to recognize her. We bonded over overpriced face masks and daddy issues. She told me she liked my coat. I told her I liked her shoes. Women become friends over shared pain, even when one of them is a loaded gun. A week later, she invited me to brunch. A month later, I had access to everything. Her calendar, her thoughts, her doubts. She trusted me. God help her. I dropped seeds. Slowly, surgically. A comment here. A text there. Something she overheard at an event I accidentally invited her to. Nothing that directly accused Daniel, just enough to make her start wondering who he really was. And behind the scenes? I started feeding stories to a tabloid journalist I once dated, a man named Clive who owed me more than a few favors. The stories were always anonymous, always secondhand. About Daniel's alleged gambling debts. About a girl in Paris. About a fistfight with a former coach in LA, all unverifiable, and all absolutely true. Within 6 weeks, the headlines began to change. Golden Boy Carrington's secrets leak. Sponsors started asking questions. His club demanded a PR cleanup. His agent, silent. I watched it all unfold with a glass of scotch in my hand and satisfaction in my bloodstream. But I wasn't done. One night, at a Devonshire Foundation banquet, I watched as Daniel and Amelia stood on stage accepting a humanitarian couple award. The irony nearly choked me. As Amelia held the mic, I slipped a folder into her clutch. Photos, emails, hotel receipts. Dates that overlapped with nights he claimed to be training in Madrid. The next morning she ghosted him, publicly. By Friday, Daniel was pulled from media appearances. His image, so carefully sculpted, began to crack. And me? I was just Madison Blake, PR manager, polished, professional, invisible in plain sight. London was never my dream. It was his launch pad.
His kingdom.
Now it was my hunting ground.
He thought he left me behind in America, but I was never behind.
I was just waiting for the right moment to drive the knife in. And darling, I don't miss. Revenge doesn't always wear a knife or carry gasoline. Sometimes it walks into the room in a black cashmere coat, kisses your cheek, and calls itself your friend. That's what I became to Amelia Devonshire. Naive, sweet Amelia. The kind of woman who leaves her phone unlocked on cafe tables and assumes everyone clapping at a gala is genuinely happy for her. I never hated her. In another life, I might have protected her. But she stood on the pedestal they tried to drag me off. She lived in the future Daniel promised me, and for that she became part of the battlefield. I didn't need to break her. I just needed to use her. So I moved in with subtlety, carefully, like a splinter sliding beneath the skin. I positioned myself beside her at boutiques and fundraisers. Spoke just enough truth to earn her trust. She needed someone who wasn't impressed by her last name or terrified of her father. I played that role perfectly. She didn't know I already knew her schedule, her patterns, even her perfume, rose and cashmere, predictable and weak. She brought me into her inner circle, and I didn't flinch when she called Daniel her anchor. That word used to be mine. I smiled, complimented her dress, and made mental notes. She introduced me to her father, Harrison Devonshire. Now he was someone worth fearing. 3-time divorce. Owner of hotels from London to Geneva. Rumored to have handled delicate problems for political figures behind closed doors. His handshake was cold, calculated, like a man who'd already measured the threat I could become. I made sure he saw me as useful before dangerous. At a charity auction in Knightsbridge, I leaned in and whispered, "You know your daughter's heart is pure. But Daniel Carrington, that man will eat it for sport." He watched me for a long moment and said nothing. A week later, I left a package at his private office. No signature, no traceable prints. Inside, a single photo of Daniel and Amelia in a compromising pose, staged but believable. She was laughing, leaning into him. His eyes? Focused elsewhere, on the waitress bending over the hors d'oeuvre tray. I added a note, "He's using her. I can prove it." I knew Harrison wouldn't confront her. Men like him don't ask questions. They dig until they find blood, and he did. In the following weeks, I watched a slow implosion that only I could fully enjoy. Rumors started bleeding into press rooms. Anonymous tips about Daniel's gambling debts. A hushed lawsuit from a former trainer at his American club. And then, the dagger, a leaked email where Daniel referred to the Devonshires as ancient paper money with no spark. That was my favorite. Because I'd written it myself, forged with just enough arrogance and slang to pass for him. His contract was pulled for review. Sponsors backed away like he'd developed a contagious disease. Interviews were canceled. His agent? Unreachable. Daniel, once the golden boy of American football turned European prodigy, was radioactive now. I watched from a distance as he tried to clean up the mess, all while Amelia's smile started to look thinner and her heels lower. She stopped wearing designer, stopped showing up to events altogether, and Janice? She flew in from America like a vulture in pearls. I saw her outside the Corinthia Hotel, red-faced and furious, yelling at a publicist. Her carefully constructed image, Southern grace mixed with business polish, was cracking. I walked by in sunglasses and a long coat. She didn't recognize me, but soon she would, because I wasn't done yet. I didn't just want Daniel's career destroyed. I wanted the myth of Daniel Carrington dismantled, from the posters to the podcast interviews, the charity facades to the Gucci suits. I wanted to erase him the way he tried to erase me, slowly, publicly, irreversibly. The next phase was surgical. I sent a gift to a junior editor at the Times, a USB drive with photos, timelines, voice memos from anonymous sources, and one scathing testimony from an ex-chef in Charleston who claimed Daniel owed him $14,000 in unpaid catering for his secret engagement party. Fabricated? Maybe, but believable? Absolutely. People don't verify details when the truth already tastes good. By the end of the month, the media had its narrative. The charming American athlete with a crooked smile and even more crooked deals. The man who used people like stepping stones. The boy who traded wives like shoes. And that's when I dropped the match on the gasoline-soaked floor. I sent Janice a private letter. Not typed, handwritten, so she'd feel every curve of the words. You said, your divorce is final now. I said nothing then. I'm speaking now. Madison, no threats, no names. Just clarity. She knew. I imagined her holding that letter with shaking hands, rage boiling under her diamond-studded skin. Knowing she couldn't stop the unraveling, that it had already begun, and there was no name or number she could call to fix it. As for Daniel, he tried reaching out once. One call, one voicemail. Mads, I don't know what the hell is going on. If this is about London or, I don't know, the way things ended, can we talk? You don't have to forgive me, but at least let's delete. I didn't need to hear the rest. There's no redemption arc in my story. You see, this wasn't about forgiveness. This was war. And I wasn't aiming to wound. I was here to bury. 1 month later, I returned to Charleston. But not like a woman coming home, like a storm circling back to the coast that once tried to survive it. The sun hadn't changed. Neither had the streets. The cracked sidewalks of King Street, the old iron gates around Harleston Village, the smell of salt-soaked brick. But I had changed. I was no longer the version of myself that hung white curtains in the bedroom and prayed for peace. No, that Madison died the moment Daniel left for London with a suitcase full of dreams and a heart empty of me. I didn't fly in. I arrived in a black 1969 Chevrolet Impala. A nod to my father's car and a declaration. I wasn't here to blend in. The first place I went was the house, our house. Except it hadn't been ours for months, at least not to Daniel. He had defaulted on mortgage payments trying to plug the bleeding holes in his reputation, lawsuits and endorsements. When I learned it had gone into pre-foreclosure, I bought it in cash. Straight from the Devonshire settlement. Harrison had been generous. Not for me, but for his own daughter who now lived quietly in Zurich. Nursing the wounds of public humiliation and a broken engagement, he called me himself. Asked nothing, offered everything. My daughter trusted the wrong man, he said. You made sure he paid for it. I took his money. I took the house. And I repainted everything. Gone were the soft pine greens and ivory whites. Now the walls breathed red and charcoal, colors that didn't ask for forgiveness, only understanding. Colors that said, I survived fire, and I learned to like the heat. I stood in the kitchen one morning, bare feet on cold tile, sipping coffee from the same mug Janice once told me didn't match the aesthetic. I smiled at the memory. That's when I saw her pull up. A rented black Lincoln, too polished for Charleston grit. She stepped out in heels too high for southern humidity and pearls, clinging to her neck like the past clings to people who don't know how to let go. I didn't open the door. I let her knock once, twice, 3 times. Then, slowly I turned the handle and greeted her with silence. "You did this," she said, eyes flashing, chest heaving under a linen blouse that cost more than my first car. I studied her. No makeup this time, her hair pulled back too tight. This wasn't the Janice who strutted through club suites in London or posed in family photos. This was the Janice who realized the empire she tried to build on her son's name was collapsing. And she couldn't figure out how it happened. "No, Janice," I said, voice calm. "I became this because you taught me that silence is submission." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but the words never came. She saw it in my eyes. This wasn't about hurt anymore. It was about power. I had taken everything they thought they could strip from me. My marriage, my dignity, my place in their golden legacy, and I had repainted it, reshaped it, and named it mine. I closed the door on her face. That evening I lit a fire in the backyard pit. The sky was velvet black, the air heavy with jasmine and summer heat. I opened an old trunk I had found in the attic, filled with memories I didn't need. Daniel's cleats from his rookie season. A jersey I once wore to his games. A faded photo of us at the beach, his arms slung over my shoulder like possession, not love. I didn't hesitate. One by one, I dropped them into the flames. The cleats curled in on themselves, the jersey melted like skin, the photo turned to ash in seconds. Each object gave off a bitter scent, like regret and scorched ambition. I sat there until only embers remained, flickering red like the edges of an ending. I didn't cry, because this wasn't grief. This was rebirth. A week later, I received a package, no return address. Just my name, written in pen too familiar. Inside, a watch. Daniel's, the same one I gave him for our 1-year anniversary. Custom engraved on the back. "When you win, we win." He must have sent it back, some twisted gesture of apology or shame. I held it for a moment, then tossed it into the marsh behind the house. Let the tides eat it. Daniel was done. The club terminated his contract. No team in America or Europe would touch him now, too messy, too exposed. The golden boy had rusted, and Janice, rumors swirled that she moved to Atlanta to start fresh, but was living in a 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery her cousin owned. That she refused to speak Daniel's name, that she blamed me for all of it. Let her. Let her sit in that small kitchen with the smell of cinnamon rolls and failure, remembering the woman she underestimated. The daughter-in-law she tried to erase. I didn't need a man. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed revenge. And I got it. Not in a single moment of chaos, but in calculated strikes, cold decisions, and silence sharp enough to slice through legacy. I burned the past, but not in anger, in purpose. Because I was never the victim. I was the match.